One drop of water. That's all it took for Michael Frizzell to destroy a waitress in front of his entire dinner party. He mocked her intelligence. He called her worthless. He assumed she couldn't understand a single word on the financial reports in front of him. What he didn't know. Jennifer Munger had once testified before federal agents about those exact numbers, because she was the anonymous analyst who dismantled a $400 million criminal empire. And right now, she was watching his CFO betray him in real time. Welcome back, my beautiful souls, to Mr. Crown Stories. If no one reminded you today, hear this: your struggle is not your ending. Your pain is not your identity. You are stronger than every tear you've cried in silence. I create these stories for hearts like yours, wounded but still beating, tired but still fighting, hoping for sunrise after the longest night. If this story touches you, click subscribe, comment "I am rising," and tell me where you're watching from, because tomorrow, another powerful story awaits you. Every word I speak is for the one who refused to stay broken. Now, let us begin. The service bell chimed in the kitchen of the Rosewood Continental, a sound that had become the soundtrack to Jennifer Munger's quiet suffering. It was 7:30 on a Friday evening, and the restaurant, so exclusive that politicians begged for reservations, hummed with a low murmur of wealth and power. The air smelled of aged wine and arrogance. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across tables where deals worth millions were sealed between bites of imported steak. Jennifer, 28 years old, adjusted 3 plates along her forearm, the porcelain edges pressing into a bruise she'd earned from yesterday's double shift. Each plate cost more than her monthly rent. She was, by any measure that mattered to the world she'd left behind, a genius. She once held the highest security clearance in a cyber intelligence unit so secret it didn't officially exist. She had dismantled international fraud networks. She had saved corporations, governments, and countless innocent people from financial ruin. Her mind could decode encryption patterns that stumped entire federal teams. She was also 6 months behind on her mother's chemotherapy bills. This crushing weight, this invisible chain around her throat, was why she stood here now, wearing a starched black apron, smiling at people who looked through her like glass. Munger. Table 12 needs bread. Table 8 wants their check. And the Frizzell party just arrived. The voice sliced through the kitchen noise like a blade. Do not mess this up. The voice belonged to Raymond Holt, the restaurant's general manager, a man who lived in a permanent state of nervous worship toward the wealthy and open cruelty toward those who served them. The Frizzell party? Jennifer repeated, her blood cooling by several degrees. Michael Frizzell. As in Frizzell Technologies. As in the man who could buy this entire building before his appetizer arrives. Raymond straightened his already immaculate tie, his eyes darting toward the private dining area. Everything is yes, Mr. Frizzell. Everything is right away, Mr. Frizzell. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't exist. Understood. Understood, Jennifer said, her voice flat and professional. And for God's sake, Raymond added, already walking away, don't make eye contact. Jennifer exhaled slowly, smoothing her apron with hands that had once typed code capable of collapsing financial empires. Her friend Clara, another server, appeared beside her at the drink station, loading a tray with champagne flutes. You pulled Frizzell? Clara whispered, eyes wide. Girl, last month he had a server fired because his napkin was folded wrong. Not dirty. Not stained. Folded wrong. Raymond threw her out before dessert. Folded wrong. Jennifer murmured. What does that even mean? It means he's a monster in a suit, Clara said, lifting her tray. Just be invisible, Jen. Survive the night. Jennifer nodded. But something old and familiar stirred in her chest, a bitter heat she hadn't felt in years. She had spent half a decade becoming untraceable. She had buried her identity, her brilliance, her entire existence to escape the people who wanted her dead for what she knew. Now her greatest professional achievement was learning to become a ghost for a man who believed napkin geometry was a personal offense. She grabbed a crystal pitcher of ice water, the condensation biting cold against her fingers, and pushed through the heavy wooden doors into the private dining room. The room was elegant and suffocating. Two men sat at a long mahogany table covered in documents and laptops. One was older, gray-haired, with the exhausted face of a man who had spent decades cleaning up someone else's messes. This was Gareth Boyd, Michael's CFO. The other man faced the door. Michael Frizzell. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes so cold they seemed to freeze the air around him. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than her car, but he wore it like a weapon. Power radiated off him like heat from a fire, dangerous, consuming, absolute. Water? Jennifer asked quietly, approaching the table. Michael didn't look up. He simply waved a hand, dismissive, automatic, as if swatting away an insect. Jennifer moved in silence. She filled Gareth's glass first. Then she stepped toward Michael, tilting the heavy pitcher with practiced grace. The water poured smoothly. And then, a single drop slipped from the rim and landed on the dark wood, inches from a stack of financial reports. Jennifer froze. Michael stopped talking. The silence was deafening. Slowly, deliberately, Michael turned his head. His dark eyes didn't look at her. They looked at the drop, studying it as though it were a personal insult delivered by the universe itself. Then he lifted his gaze. It wasn't anger. It was contempt, pure, freezing, absolute. Raymond. His voice boomed through the door like thunder. The door burst open and Raymond scrambled inside, pale and trembling. Mr. Frizzell, is everything. This server, Michael interrupted, gesturing toward Jennifer like she was a stain on his evening, is incompetent. I'm in the middle of a negotiation worth more than her entire bloodline, and I have to be interrupted by this. Sir, I apologize, Jennifer started. Quiet. Raymond hissed, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket to dab at the single drop as though it were acid. Mr. Frizzell, I am so sorry. She will be removed immediately. Michael leaned back, his cold eyes still locked on Jennifer. Then he turned to Gareth and let out a short, cruel laugh. Look at this, he said loudly, gesturing toward her. She can't even stand straight without shaking. God help us, these restaurants will hire anyone nowadays. A few guests at nearby tables glanced over, smirking. Jennifer's cheeks burned. But she said nothing. Tell me something, Michael continued, his voice dripping with mockery. Do they hire you people based on pity? Or did you just stumble in off the street hoping someone would give you a purpose? His associate shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Michael grinned wider. What's your story anyway? Run away? Drop out? Let me guess, you thought wearing an apron was glamorous. Jennifer's grip tightened on the pitcher. Her story? He didn't want her story. He didn't want to know about the encrypted servers she'd cracked at 22. He didn't want to hear about the $400 million laundering ring she'd exposed before her 25th birthday. He didn't want to learn that her testimony had put 3 men in federal prison, or that the people she'd destroyed had sworn to destroy her in return. So she said nothing. Michael waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. You probably don't understand half of what I'm saying anyway. He turned back to his documents, already erasing her from his reality. But what Michael didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that this moment, this single act of cruelty, had just sealed his fate. Because Jennifer Munger was not just a waitress. And the numbers on those financial reports? She recognized them. She had seen that pattern before, the same signature, the same structure, the same ghost trail she had once followed across 3 continents. Michael Frizzell's empire was built on a lie. And she was the only person alive who could prove it. He didn't know her secret. The one that would make him beg for her forgiveness. Jennifer pushed through the kitchen doors, her hands trembling against the empty pitcher. The noise hit her like a wave, clattering dishes, shouting cooks, the relentless chime of service bells. But she heard none of it. Her ears were ringing with Michael Frizzell's laughter, his cruel words echoing in her skull like a curse she couldn't escape. Do they hire you people based on pity? She set the pitcher down on the steel counter, gripping the edge until her knuckles turned white. You probably don't understand half of what I'm saying anyway. Jennifer closed her eyes. And suddenly, She wasn't in the Rosewood Continental anymore. She was somewhere else. Somewhere she had sworn never to return. The room was windowless, lit by the cold blue glow of 17 computer monitors. Jennifer sat at the center console, her fingers flying across the keyboard with surgical precision. Lines of code cascaded down her screen like digital rain. She was 25 years old. And she was hunting ghosts. "Munger, talk to me." The voice came through her earpiece. Director Harrison Cole, her handler, watching from the observation room above. "I'm in," Jennifer said, her eyes never leaving the screen. "The shell company in Cyprus connects to a holding firm in the Caymans. That firm feeds into a hedge fund registered in Delaware. The hedge fund is a front." "A front for what?" Jennifer's fingers stopped. She leaned closer to the monitor, her breath catching. "For everything," she whispered. "Director, this isn't just money laundering. This is a network. They're moving funds for 3 separate criminal organizations across 12 countries. We're talking weapons, human trafficking, political bribes." She pulled up another window, her heart pounding. $400 million in the last 18 months alone. Silence on the other end. "Then, can you trace it to the source?" Jennifer cracked her knuckles. "Give me 4 hours." It took her 3. By dawn, she had mapped the entire network, every transaction, every account, every name. She had followed digital breadcrumbs across continents, through firewalls that were supposed to be impenetrable, into servers that officially didn't exist. And at the center of it all, she found them. The Volkov Syndicate. A criminal organization so powerful that governments pretended they didn't exist. They had judges in their pockets, politicians on their payroll, and a reputation for making problems disappear, permanently. Jennifer had just become their biggest problem. The operation was classified at the highest level. Jennifer's testimony was sealed. Her identity was scrubbed from every database, every record, every system. But the Volkovs had resources that governments couldn't match. They found her anyway. The first warning came as a photograph, her apartment building, shot from across the street. No note. No message. Just the image slipped under her door. The second warning was more direct. Her mother's hospital room. A man in a dark coat standing at the foot of her bed, watching her sleep. When security reviewed the footage, the cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned for exactly 7 minutes. Jennifer understood the message. "We can reach you. We can reach everyone you love. And there is nowhere you can hide." Director Cole gave her a choice: enter witness protection or disappear on her own. Jennifer chose to vanish. She erased herself. Changed her name. Moved 4 times in 18 months. She abandoned her career, her credentials, her entire identity. The woman who had once dismantled a $400 million criminal empire became a ghost, not the kind that haunted, but the kind that simply ceased to exist. She took jobs that required no background checks. Waitressing, cleaning, retail, anything that let her blend into the background, invisible and forgotten. She learned to keep her head down, to never make eye contact, to never, ever show how brilliant she truly was. Because brilliance had nearly gotten her killed. And it had nearly gotten her mother killed too. Jennifer opened her eyes. The kitchen noise crashed back into focus. The sizzle of pans, the bark of orders, the endless mechanical rhythm of service. She was shaking. Not from fear. From something worse. Recognition. Those financial reports on Michael Frizzell's table. The numbers she had glimpsed before Raymond dragged her away. The structure of the transactions, the pattern of the transfers, the ghost trail hidden beneath legitimate figures. She knew that signature. She had seen it before, in a windowless room, on 17 monitors, 3 years ago. Someone inside Frizzell Technologies was running the same playbook the Volkov Syndicate had used. The same laundering structure. The same digital fingerprints. Either someone had copied the Volkov's methods, or someone connected to that world had infiltrated Michael Frizzell's company. And Michael, arrogant, cruel, untouchable Michael, had no idea his empire was being hollowed out from the inside. The voice cut through her spiral. Clara appeared beside her, concern etched across her face. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened in there?" Jennifer forced a smile. "Nothing. Just Frizzell being Frizzell." Clara studied her for a long moment, unconvinced. "He said something, didn't he? Something bad." "It doesn't matter." "Jen." "I said it doesn't matter." Jennifer's voice came out sharper than intended. She softened. "I'm fine, Clara. Really. Just tired." Clara didn't push. But her eyes said everything. "I don't believe you." "Okay," Clara said quietly. "But if you need to talk, I'm here." She squeezed Jennifer's arm and walked away, disappearing into the chaos of the dinner rush. Jennifer stood alone. Her mind was racing, calculating, analyzing, doing everything she had trained herself to stop doing. "Walk away," she told herself. "This is not your fight. You are invisible. You are no one. You swore you would never go back to that world." But Michael's voice echoed in her memory. "Do they hire you people based on pity? You probably don't understand half of what I'm saying." He had looked at her like she was nothing. Like she was less than nothing. Like her entire existence was a joke unworthy of his attention. And something inside Jennifer, something she had buried for 3 years, something she thought she had killed, began to stir. She had stayed silent when the Volkovs threatened her life. She had stayed silent when she lost everything she had worked for. She had stayed silent when her brilliance became a prison instead of a gift. But this time, a man who knew nothing about suffering, nothing about sacrifice, nothing about what it meant to lose everything, had stood in his designer suit and called her worthless. Jennifer's jaw tightened. She thought of her mother, lying in that hospital bed, fighting a battle she might not win. She thought of the bills piling up, the exhaustion, the endless cycle of invisible servitude. She thought of who she used to be. And for the first time in 3 years, Jennifer Munger made a decision. She would not stay silent. Not this time. 1 week later, Michael Frizzell returned to the Rosewood Continental. Jennifer heard him before she saw him, that sharp, commanding voice cutting through the restaurant's elegant hum like a blade through silk. Her stomach tightened as she watched him stride through the entrance, flanked by 2 associates in matching charcoal suits. He was different tonight. Louder. More animated. His movements carried a restless, electric energy, the kind that came from either triumph or desperation wearing a mask. Raymond materialized beside her like a nervous apparition. "Frizzell's back," he hissed. "Private dining room. Same table." "And Munger," he grabbed her arm, his grip unnecessarily tight. "You're serving him again." Jennifer's blood ran cold. "Mr. Holt, after last time." "After last time, he specifically requested you." Raymond's smile was thin and brittle. "Apparently, he found your presence amusing. Consider it a compliment." It wasn't a compliment. Jennifer knew exactly what it was. Entertainment. She was his entertainment now, a mouse he wanted to bat around before dinner. "Don't embarrass me," Raymond added, already walking away. "And don't embarrass yourself." Jennifer stood motionless for a long moment. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to walk out, to disappear into another city and start over again. But her mother's face flashed through her mind. The hospital bills. The treatments. The desperate, clawing need for money that kept her chained to this place. She couldn't run. Not yet. Jennifer grabbed her notepad, steadied her breath, and pushed through the doors to the private dining room. The scene inside was tense beneath its polished surface. Michael sat at the head of the table, leaning back in his chair with the casual arrogance of a king surveying his kingdom. But his associates, Gareth Boyd, the silver-haired CFO, and a younger man Jennifer didn't recognize, wore expressions of barely concealed anxiety. "Completely baseless," Michael was saying, waving his hand dismissively. "The Wall Street Journal can print whatever garbage they want. You think I'm worried about some hack journalist digging through our financials?" "Sir, they're not just digging," the younger associate said carefully. "They're asking specific questions. About the offshore accounts. About the discrepancies in last quarters. Discrepancies. Michael laughed, that same cruel, sharp sound that haunted Jennifer's memories. There are no discrepancies. There's innovation. There's complexity. There's strategy that small minds can't comprehend. He picked up his wine glass and swirled it lazily. Let me tell you something about the press. They're parasites. They see success, and they want to tear it down. It's what losers do when they can't build anything themselves. Gareth Boyd nodded slowly, but his eyes betrayed something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Of course, sir. I just think we should be prepared. Prepared for what? For idiots who don't understand how real business works. Michael drained his wine and slammed the glass down. I've built a $12 billion empire. I've created jobs, transformed industries, changed the way the world moves money. And some journalist wants to question my numbers. He laughed again. Let them try. Jennifer approached the table quietly, notepad in hand. Good evening, she said, her voice professionally neutral. May I take your orders? Michael's head turned slowly. When he recognized her, a smile spread across his face, the kind a cat gives a cornered bird. Well, well. The trembling girl returns. He gestured broadly to his associates. Gentlemen, this is the one I told you about. The one who can't pour water without causing an international incident. The younger associate gave an uncomfortable laugh. Gareth Boyd simply looked away. Jennifer kept her expression blank. Would you like to start with drinks, sir? What I'd like, Michael said, leaning forward, is to understand something. He studied her with theatrical curiosity. What exactly qualifies you to work here? Is this some kind of charity program? Employment for the intellectually unfortunate? Heat rose in Jennifer's chest, but she swallowed it down. I'm happy to give you a moment to review the menu. I'm not finished. Michael held up a hand. Look at those hands. Soft. Uncalloused. You've clearly never done real work in your life. He tilted his head. Let me guess, you probably think this job is hard. Carrying plates. Remembering orders. Smiling at people smarter than you. He chuckled. You should be grateful, you know. Most restaurants wouldn't hire someone like you. You're lucky to even be here. Jennifer's grip tightened on her notepad until the edges bit into her palm. Don't react. Don't give him the satisfaction. You are invisible. You are no one. The salmon is excellent tonight, she said quietly. Chef's recommendation. Michael stared at her for a long moment, clearly disappointed by her refusal to crumble. Then he waved his hand dismissively. Fine. Salmon for the table. And bring another bottle of the Bordeaux. He turned back to his associates, already forgetting she existed. Now where were we? Ah yes, the numbers. Jennifer began to step back, but Michael's next words stopped her cold. Gareth, pull up the Q3 projections. I want to show Marcus here how we structured the Wellington accounts. Gareth hesitated. Sir, perhaps this isn't the best place. Nonsense. We're in a private room. What's she going to do? He jerked his thumb toward Jennifer without looking at her. Understand any of it? He laughed at his own joke, and the younger associate, Marcus, joined in nervously. Gareth reluctantly opened his laptop and turned the screen toward Michael. The Wellington subsidiary shows a 14% increase in offshore holdings, Gareth said quietly. The transfers from the Cyprus account have been restructured through the Delaware shell. See. Michael jabbed a finger at the screen triumphantly. This is what genius looks like. We moved $38 million through Wellington in 6 months. Completely clean. Completely untraceable. The IRS could audit us for a decade and never find a single. Jennifer stopped breathing. Cyprus. Delaware. Shell company restructuring. $38 million in 6 months. The pattern hit her like a thunderbolt. She had seen this exact structure before. The same routing. The same layering technique. The same digital fingerprints she had traced across 3 continents in a windowless room 3 years ago. This wasn't innovation. This was the Volkov playbook. Someone had copied, or continued, the exact methodology she had exposed. And they had buried it inside Michael Frizzell's company so deeply that he was bragging about it like a trophy. He didn't know. The realization crashed through her mind with devastating clarity. Michael Frizzell, arrogant, untouchable, $12 billion Michael Frizzell, had no idea that his own CFO was running a laundering operation under his nose. He was sitting on a bomb, lighting matches, and laughing at the smoke. And Jennifer was the only person alive who could see the fuse burning. She looked at Gareth Boyd. The CFO's eyes met hers for a split second, and in that instant, Jennifer saw it. Recognition. Calculation. Fear. He knows, she thought. He knows exactly what he's doing. And now he knows that I know. Jennifer's heart pounded against her ribs. She forced her feet to move, backing toward the door with mechanical calm. "Your order will be ready shortly," she said, her voice somehow steady. Michael didn't even acknowledge her. He was still laughing, still pointing at numbers on the screen, still celebrating his own brilliance. Jennifer pushed through the door and stood in the hallway, her back pressed against the wall. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was racing. And for the first time in 3 years, the ghost she had buried began to rise. She whispered into the empty corridor, her voice barely audible. "This man doesn't even know he's drowning." Jennifer returned to the private dining room 45 minutes later, balancing 3 plates of salmon with mechanical precision. Her mind had not stopped racing since she'd left. Every calculation, every pattern, every digital breadcrumb she had traced 3 years ago now overlaid itself onto what she had just witnessed. The Cyprus routing. The Delaware shell. The layered transfers designed to look like legitimate business restructuring. It was the Volkov signature. Unmistakable. Undeniable. And Gareth Boyd was running it right under Michael Frizzell's nose. She pushed through the door, her face a mask of professional calm. The men were still talking, louder now, more animated. Empty wine bottles lined the table like fallen soldiers. Michael's cheeks were flushed, his gestures broader, his voice carrying the dangerous edge of alcohol-fueled confidence. "And that's why I don't worry about audits," he was saying, jabbing his finger at Marcus. "Because I hire the best. Gareth here has been with me for 8 years. 8 years. You think I don't trust him with my life?" Gareth smiled thinly, but his eyes flickered toward the door as Jennifer entered. Their gazes met for a fraction of a second. Jennifer saw it again, that cold calculation, that silent warning. "Stay quiet. Walk away. You don't want to play this game." She set the first plate in front of Marcus. Then Gareth. She saved Michael for last. As she placed his salmon before him, Michael leaned back and let out a theatrical sigh. "Finally. I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost." He picked up his fork, examining the fish with exaggerated scrutiny. "Tell me something, sweetheart. Do they actually train you people, or do they just hand you an apron and hope for the best?" Jennifer said nothing. "I mean, look at you." Michael gestured at her with his fork. Standing there like a mannequin. No personality. No presence. Just empty. He chuckled and glanced at his associates. "This is what's wrong with the service industry. They hire decorative tray holders instead of actual professionals." Marcus laughed nervously. Gareth kept his eyes on his plate. Jennifer stood perfectly still. Decorative tray holder. The words landed like a match on gasoline. 3 years of silence. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of watching men like this look through her, talk down to her, treat her like she was less than human. And now this man, this arrogant, oblivious man sitting on a financial time bomb, was calling her decoration. Something inside Jennifer shifted. Not cracked. Not fractured. Shifted. Like a key turning in a lock that had been sealed for far too long. "Mr. Frizzell." Her voice came out quiet. Controlled. But there was something in it now, a precision that hadn't been there before. Michael paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused that she had dared to speak. "Oh?" "The tray holder has something to say." Jennifer didn't flinch. "The numbers your company submitted last quarter were manipulated." The room went still. Michael's fork froze in mid-air. His smirk faltered, then returned, but weaker now, uncertain. "Excuse me." Jennifer took one step closer to the table. Her voice remained low, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. "The Wellington subsidiary. The one you were so proud of earlier." She tilted her head slightly. "The 14% increase in offshore holdings? It's artificial." The transfers from Cyprus were routed through 3 separate shell companies before hitting Delaware: Meridian Holdings, Crestview Capital, and Apex Ventures. Michael's face drained of color. Marcus looked up sharply, confusion and fear warring across his features. Gareth Boyd had stopped breathing. Jennifer continued, her eyes locked on Michael. "The server logs from your financial department were altered 6 weeks ago. Someone erased the original transaction timestamps and replaced them with falsified entries. Whoever did it was good, but not good enough." She paused. "They used an outdated encryption method. One that was popular about 3 years ago, in certain circles." Michael's mouth opened, but no words came out. "The pattern is called layered integration," Jennifer said. "It's designed to make illegitimate funds appear legitimate through a series of seemingly unrelated transactions. Shell company to holding firm to hedge fund to primary accounts. Each layer adds distance from the source." She let the silence hang for a moment. "It's the same method used by the Volkov syndicate before they were dismantled in 2022. The name landed like a bomb. Marcus pushed back from the table, his face pale. "The Volkov, what is she talking about?" Michael didn't answer. He was staring at Jennifer as if seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her. The arrogance had evaporated. In its place was something she had never expected to see on his face. Fear. "Who?" His voice came out hoarse. "Not have humiliated." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Gareth Boyd stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is absurd. I don't know who this woman thinks she is, but she's clearly unstable. Michael, I'll have security remove her immediately." "Sit down, Gareth." Michael's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like a blade. Gareth froze. "I said sit down." The CFO lowered himself back into his chair, his face ashen. Michael turned back to Jennifer. His hands were trembling slightly, a detail she noted with cold satisfaction. "How do you know this?" he demanded. "How could you possibly know any of this?" Jennifer stepped back from the table. "That's not the question you should be asking, Mr. Frizzell." "Then what is?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and for one moment, she let him see exactly who she was. Not the waitress. Not the ghost. Not the invisible woman he had mocked and degraded. The analyst. The hunter. The one who had brought empires to their knees. "The question you should be asking," she said softly, "is why your CFO just turned white." Michael's head snapped toward Gareth. Gareth Boyd's face was a mask of barely controlled panic. His fingers gripped the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles had gone bone white. Jennifer turned and walked toward the door. "Wait," Michael called out, his voice cracking. "Wait, you can't just. Who are you? What's your name?" Jennifer paused at the threshold. She didn't turn around. "My name is Jennifer Munger. And Mr. Frizzell." She glanced back over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "You might want to check your accounts before the FBI does." She pushed through the door and let it swing shut behind her. The private dining room erupted into chaos, shouting voices, scraping chairs, Michael's demands for answers crashing against Gareth's desperate denials. But Jennifer heard none of it. She walked through the kitchen, past Clara's confused questions, past Raymond's furious shouts, and out the back door into the cold night air. Her hands were steady now. Her mind was clear. For 3 years, she had been a ghost. Tonight, She had become a hurricane. The headline hit at 6:47 a.m. Frizzell Technologies under federal investigation, billions in suspected fraud. By 7:15, every major news outlet had picked up the story. By 8 o'clock, the hashtag Frizzell fraud was trending worldwide. By 9:30, Michael Frizzell's empire had lost $4 billion in market value, and the bleeding showed no signs of stopping. Michael sat in the back of his black Mercedes, watching the numbers cascade across his phone screen like a digital avalanche. His driver navigated through downtown traffic, but Michael saw none of it. His eyes were fixed on the destruction unfolding in real time. Frizzell Technologies, minus 18.7%. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Board members, investors, lawyers, journalists. Everyone wanted answers. He had none. The car pulled into the underground parking garage of Frizzell Tower, and Michael was moving before the vehicle fully stopped. He stormed through the executive entrance, past security guards who avoided his gaze, past assistants who pressed themselves against walls to let him pass. The 47th floor was chaos. Phones rang unanswered. Staff clustered around monitors, whispering in panicked tones. The glass-walled conference room was already packed with his senior leadership team, lawyers, analysts, PR specialists, all wearing the same expression of barely controlled terror. Michael burst through the doors. "Someone tell me what the hell is happening." The room fell silent. His chief legal counsel, Patricia Vance, stepped forward. Her face was gray, her usually immaculate composure cracked at the edges. "The FBI issued subpoenas at 6 this morning. They're requesting all financial records from the past 3 years, specifically anything related to the Wellington subsidiary, the Cyprus transfers, and the Delaware shell companies." The names hit Michael like physical blows. Wellington, Cyprus, Delaware. Jennifer's voice echoed in his memory. The 14% increase in offshore holdings? It's artificial. How do they know about those accounts? Michael demanded. Those structures are buried under 7 layers of. We don't know. Patricia's voice was tight. Someone leaked detailed information. Specific account numbers. Transaction dates. Server access logs. She paused. Whoever did this had inside knowledge. Deep inside knowledge. The conference room door opened, and Gareth Boyd walked in. He looked immaculate. Composed. Not a hair out of place, not a wrinkle in his charcoal suit. He carried a leather portfolio under his arm and wore an expression of grave concern, the perfect picture of a loyal executive arriving to help navigate a crisis. "Michael." Gareth's voice was smooth, sympathetic. "I came as soon as I heard. This is devastating." Michael stared at him. "The question you should be asking is why your CFO just turned white." Gareth. Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. "Explain to me how federal investigators know the exact structure of accounts that only you had access to." Gareth didn't flinch. Instead, he sighed heavily and set his portfolio on the table. "I've been asking myself the same question all morning." He shook his head slowly. "Michael, I think we have a mole. Someone in the finance department, possibly someone with a grudge, has been feeding information to outside parties." A mole. It's the only explanation. Gareth opened his portfolio and spread several documents across the table. "I've been reviewing our internal access logs. There are several anomalies. Unauthorized login attempts. Files accessed outside normal business hours." He looked up, meeting Michael's eyes with practiced sincerity. "I hate to say this, but the evidence points to someone on your personal staff." Michael felt the ground shifting beneath him. "My staff." "Your executive assistant, perhaps. Or one of the junior analysts who had access to your private server." Gareth's voice dripped with regret. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I know how much you trusted them." The room was silent. Michael looked around at his team, the lawyers, the analysts, the specialists, and saw the doubt creeping into their faces. Gareth's narrative was clean, logical. It gave them someone to blame, someone to investigate, someone other than the man standing right in front of them. And Michael almost believed it. Almost. But then he remembered the look on Gareth's face in that private dining room. The way his fingers had gripped the table. The way his eyes had darted toward the door when Jennifer spoke. Panic. Pure, undisguised panic. Not the reaction of an innocent man hearing wild accusations. The reaction of a guilty man watching his secrets unravel. Get out. Gareth blinked. I'm sorry. Everyone. Get out. Michael's voice was barely controlled. I need the room. The team exchanged uncertain glances, but Patricia nodded and began ushering people toward the door. Within 30 seconds, Michael was alone. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city he had once believed he owned. The skyline gleamed in the morning sun, indifferent, untouchable, eternal. He had never felt so small. His phone buzzed again. Another board member. Another investor demanding explanations. He silenced it and let it fall to the table. The legal team couldn't find the laundering pattern. They had spent the past 6 hours combing through financial records and found nothing, because they didn't know what to look for. Jennifer had known. She had named the shell companies without hesitation. She had described the server log alterations as if she had watched them happen in real time. She had identified the encryption method, the routing structure, the exact methodology. It's the same method used by the Volkov syndicate before they were dismantled in 2022. Michael's blood ran cold. He pulled out his phone and typed with trembling fingers, Volkov Syndicate 2022 dismantled. The search results loaded. Michael's hands were shaking now. He scrolled through article after article, each one describing the same thing. An unnamed analyst, identity classified at the highest levels, who had single-handedly traced a $400 million criminal network across 12 countries. The same methodology Gareth was using. The same patterns Jennifer had described. Michael set his phone down slowly. Someone you should not have humiliated. He saw her face in his mind, calm, controlled, devastatingly precise. He had called her empty-headed. He had mocked her trembling hands. He had dismissed her as a decorative tray holder. And she had been the person who brought down one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. She knew everything. Not because she had guessed. Not because she had gotten lucky. Because she had done this before. Michael pressed his palms against the cold glass of the window. His CFO was framing him. His lawyers couldn't save him. His analysts were useless. The FBI was circling like sharks smelling blood. And the only person on earth who could untangle this nightmare, who could prove his innocence, who could expose Gareth Boyd for what he truly was a waitress he had treated like garbage. The realization crashed over him like a wave of ice water. The woman I insulted, he whispered to his own reflection, is the only one who can save me. The city stretched out before him, vast, glittering, indifferent. And for the first time in his adult life, Michael Frizzell had no idea what to do. The Rosewood Continental fell silent when Michael Frizzell walked through the front door. It was 9:47 p.m., the height of dinner service, and every table was occupied with the city's elite. Crystal glasses clinked. Silverware scraped against porcelain. Conversations hummed beneath the golden glow of chandeliers. Then he appeared. Not with his usual entourage. Not with his usual swagger. He walked in alone, wearing the same suit from this morning, now wrinkled, tie loosened, hair disheveled in a way no one had ever seen on the immaculate billionaire. He looked like a man who had spent the day watching his world burn. Raymond materialized instantly, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and obsequious delight in rapid succession. Mr. Frizzell. What an unexpected pleasure. Your usual table? I'll have it prepared immediately. I'm not here to eat. Raymond blinked. Sir. Michael's eyes scanned the room with desperate intensity. Where is she? I'm sorry. The waitress. Jennifer Munger. His voice cracked on her name. Where is she? Raymond's expression shifted to something between confusion and alarm. Mr. Frizzell, If this is about last night, I assure you she has been dealt with. I terminated her employment this morning. She won't be bothering you again. You did what? The sharpness in Michael's voice made Raymond take a physical step backward. I fired her, sir. After that disgraceful display, I assumed. Where does she live? Sir, I can't possibly. I will buy this restaurant and fire everyone in it within the hour if you don't tell me where to find her. Raymond's face went pale. He stammered for a moment, then disappeared into the back office. He returned 30 seconds later with an address scrawled on a napkin. Michael snatched it from his trembling hand and was gone before Raymond could say another word. Jennifer's apartment building was nothing like Michael expected. It was a 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood he had never visited, the kind of place where fire escapes doubled as balconies and the hallway lights flickered with age. The elevator was out of order. A handwritten sign apologized for the inconvenience in 3 languages. He climbed 4 flights of stairs, each step heavier than the last. What was he doing here? He was Michael Frizzell. He didn't beg. He didn't apologize. He didn't chase down waitresses in run-down apartment buildings. But with every step, his legal team's words echoed in his mind. We can't trace the pattern. We don't know what we're looking for. And Jennifer's voice, cutting through his arrogance, it's the same method used by the Volkov syndicate. He reached apartment 4C and stood before the door. His hand trembled as he raised it to knock. The door opened on the 3rd knock. Jennifer stood in the doorway, wearing jeans and a faded sweater. No apron. No professional mask. Just her, raw, unguarded, and completely unsurprised to see him. I wondered how long it would take, she said flatly. Michael opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say. You should come in, Jennifer said, stepping aside. Before my neighbors start asking questions about why a billionaire is standing in my hallway looking like he's about to cry. The apartment was small. Clean but sparse, the home of someone who had learned to live with only what she needed. A worn couch. A kitchen table covered in medical bills. A single photograph on the wall of an older woman with Jennifer's eyes. Michael stood in the center of the room, utterly out of place. Jennifer leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Well, she said. You came all this way. Say what you need to say. Michael took a breath. Then another. Jennifer. His voice came out hoarse. He cleared his throat and tried again. Jennifer, I need your help. She didn't respond. The FBI is investigating. My stock has lost $4 billion. My lawyers can't find the pattern you described. My analysts are useless. He swallowed hard. And I think I know, Gareth is trying to frame me for everything. I know, Jennifer said simply. You know? I've known since the moment I saw those numbers on his laptop. She tilted her head. The question is, why should I care? Michael flinched. Because I'm innocent. I didn't know what Gareth was doing. I had no idea. And that's supposed to make me sympathetic? Jennifer's voice hardened. You had no idea you were harboring a criminal in your company because you were too busy mocking waitresses and calling people intellectually unfortunate. You were so convinced of your own superiority that you couldn't see the snake sitting at your own table. Michael stood frozen. Do you have any idea what your words did to me? Jennifer continued, her voice trembling now with something deeper than anger. You called me empty-headed. You said I was charity employment. You looked at me like I was less than nothing. She stepped closer, her eyes burning. I spent 3 years hiding. 3 years erasing myself because the last time I used my skills, people tried to kill me. People tried to kill my mother. Her voice cracked. I gave up everything I was, my career, my identity, my entire sense of self, just to stay alive. And then you stood there in your designer suit, surrounded by your sycophants, and you told me I was lucky to even exist. Michael's eyes were wet. Jennifer, I don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize because you need something. That's not an apology. That's a transaction. The words hit him like a physical blow. He stood there, broken, stripped of every defense he had ever built. The arrogance, the entitlement, the unshakable confidence that had carried him through every boardroom, every negotiation, every challenge. Gone. You're right, he whispered. Jennifer watched him, waiting. You're right, he repeated, louder now. I was cruel. I was arrogant. I treated you like you were beneath me because that's all I've ever known. His voice shook. I grew up watching my father destroy people for sport. I learned that power meant never showing weakness. I learned that if you didn't dominate, you'd be dominated. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see a waitress. He saw a woman who had sacrificed everything to do the right thing. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said quietly. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I am asking, begging, for your help. Not because I'm entitled to it. Because without you, an innocent man goes to prison while the guilty one walks free. Jennifer was silent for a long moment. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Finally, she spoke. I won't save you for your sake. Michael's heart sank. But I will save you, she continued, so the right man goes down. Michael exhaled, a shaky, desperate sound of relief. Gareth Boyd used the same people who tried to kill me, Jennifer said, her voice hardening into steel. He's running their playbook inside your company. And I didn't spend 3 years in hiding just to watch another monster win. She met his eyes. I'll help you, Michael. But understand this, when it's over, you'll be a different man. Or I'll make sure you fall right alongside him. Michael nodded slowly. I understand. Jennifer pushed off the counter and walked toward a closet. She pulled out an old laptop, dusty, unremarkable, ancient by tech standards. Then let's get to work. Jennifer walked into Frizzell Tower at 2:17 a.m. The lobby was empty except for a single security guard who barely glanced up as Michael swiped his keycard and led her toward the private elevator. The building hummed with the quiet energy of sleeping machinery, servers running, systems processing, digital hearts beating in the darkness. Jennifer felt something stir inside her. Something familiar. She had spent 3 years running from this world. 3 years pretending she was someone ordinary, someone invisible, someone who didn't understand the language of code and encryption. But standing in this elevator, watching the floor numbers climb toward the executive level, she felt the ghost of who she used to be rising from the grave. The analyst. The hunter. The woman who had once made criminal empires tremble. She was back. The executive server room occupied the entire 48th floor, a fortress of blinking lights, humming processors, and climate-controlled air. Rows of black towers stretched into the darkness like digital soldiers standing at attention. No one comes up here except IT, Michael said, his voice hushed. And Gareth. Jennifer walked slowly between the server racks, her fingers trailing across cold metal. He gave himself exclusive access, she murmured. Of course he did. She found the central terminal, a workstation surrounded by 6 monitors, each displaying scrolling data feeds. She sat down, cracked her knuckles, and began to type. Michael stood behind her, watching. For the first few minutes, he understood nothing. Lines of code cascaded across the screens. Windows opened and closed faster than he could track. Jennifer's fingers moved across the keyboard with fluid precision, never hesitating, never pausing. Then the first file appeared. Wellington Holdings, Jennifer said, highlighting a folder. Your official records show clean transfers, standard business restructuring. She typed rapidly. But underneath, a second layer of data emerged. Hidden transactions. Encrypted pathways. Money flowing through channels that didn't appear on any official report. 38 million in 6 months, Jennifer continued. Exactly what Gareth bragged about at dinner. Except it wasn't going where he told you. She pulled up another window. It was being laundered through Volkov-connected accounts in Eastern Europe, then cycled back into shell companies he controls personally. Michael's face went pale. He was stealing from me. Worse. He was using your company as a washing machine. Jennifer's voice was cold. Every dirty dollar that passed through Frizzell Technologies left your fingerprints on it. If the FBI followed the trail, it would lead directly to you, not him. She typed faster now, diving deeper into the system. The cybersecurity reports your board received every quarter? Fabricated. A document appeared on screen, official letterhead, professional formatting, completely falsified. Gareth wrote them himself. He told you the servers were secure while he was building backdoors into every system. Another window. Another revelation. Server logs from the past 18 months? Deleted and replaced. Jennifer pulled up a comparison, original timestamps versus altered ones. He erased evidence of his own access and planted false trails pointing to your executive assistant, your junior analysts, anyone but himself. Michael gripped the back of her chair, knuckles white. How did no one catch this? Because he's good. Jennifer glanced back at him. But I'm better. She worked for another hour, peeling back layer after layer of Gareth's deception. Hidden accounts in the Caymans. Encrypted communications with overseas contacts. A systematic plan to drain Frizzell Technologies of hundreds of millions while framing its founder for federal crimes. By 4 a.m., Jennifer had assembled everything. This is enough to clear you, she said, leaning back in her chair. But it's not enough to catch him. Michael frowned. What do you mean? You have all the evidence. Evidence he'll claim was planted. Fabricated. The work of a disgruntled waitress with a vendetta. Jennifer shook her head. Gareth has been doing this for years. He knows how to cover his tracks. If we hand this to the FBI, his lawyers will bury it in motions and counterclaims for decades. Then what do we do? Jennifer smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. We make him confess. Gareth Boyd arrived at Frizzell Tower at 8:47 a.m., coffee in hand, confidence intact. He had spent the night preparing his next move, a carefully orchestrated press conference where he would express deep concern over the allegations against his dear friend Michael, while subtly positioning himself as the responsible executive ready to lead the company through crisis. He stepped off the elevator onto the 47th floor and walked toward his corner office. His assistant looked up nervously. Mr. Boyd, there's been. Not now. Gareth waved her off and pushed through his office door. The room was dark except for the glow of his computer monitors. And sitting at his desk, in his chair, was Jennifer Munger. Gareth froze. Good morning, Mr. Boyd. Jennifer's voice was pleasant, almost friendly. Please. Have a seat. What the hell are you doing here? Gareth's composure cracked. Security. Someone call. Security won't help you. Jennifer gestured to the monitors. They're a little busy watching this. Gareth's eyes moved to the screens. His blood ran cold. Every monitor displayed a different piece of evidence. Shell company transfers. Encrypted communications. Deleted server logs. His personal offshore accounts. Everything he had spent years hiding, now playing on loop across 6 screens. You, his voice strangled. You can't, this is illegal, you hacked my. I didn't hack anything. Jennifer stood slowly. I simply restored the files you deleted. The original server logs. The unaltered transaction records. The communications you thought were encrypted beyond recovery. She tilted her head. The Volkov encryption method has a flaw. You would have known that if you'd done your own research instead of copying someone else's playbook. Gareth's face twisted with rage and fear. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. Jennifer stepped closer. I'm the one who took down the people you learned this from. And now I'm taking down you. She pressed a button on the keyboard. Every screen in the building, every monitor on every floor, suddenly displayed the same evidence. Conference rooms. Break rooms. The lobby. The trading floor. Gareth's crimes, broadcast to the entire company. No. Gareth lunged toward the computer, but Jennifer stepped aside smoothly. The office door burst open. Security guards flooded in, followed by two men in dark suits, FBI agents who had been waiting in the building since dawn. Gareth Boyd. The lead agent stepped forward. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud." Gareth tried to run. He made it 3 steps before security tackled him to the ground. "This isn't over," he screamed as they dragged him toward the elevator. "Frizzell, you think she saved you? She destroyed you. You're nothing without." The elevator doors closed, cutting off his voice. Jennifer stood in the silent office. Michael appeared in the doorway, his face a mixture of shock, relief, and something that looked almost like reverence. "It's done," Jennifer said quietly. "The FBI has everything they need. You're cleared." Michael stared at her. How did you do that?" Jennifer walked past him toward the door. "I remembered who I was." The aftermath stretched across 3 days. FBI agents moved through Frizzell Tower like ghosts in suits, collecting evidence, interviewing staff, dismantling the web of lies Gareth Boyd had spent years constructing. News crews camped outside the building, their cameras hungry for any glimpse of the billionaire whose empire had nearly crumbled. But Michael Frizzell was nowhere to be found. He had retreated to his private office on the 49th floor, the one with no windows, no cameras, no witnesses. He sat in the darkness for hours, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of the past week in his mind. Gareth's arrest. The evidence Jennifer had uncovered. The look on his employees' faces when they realized their CFO had been a criminal mastermind operating in plain sight. And beneath it all, one image he couldn't escape, Jennifer standing in that private dining room, calm and controlled, while he mocked her like she was nothing. On the 4th day, he went looking for her. Jennifer had been given a temporary office on the 46th floor, a glass-walled room with a view of the city she had once fled. She sat at the desk, reviewing the final documentation the FBI would need to close their case against Gareth. She heard him before she saw him. The footsteps were hesitant, uncertain. Nothing like the confident stride that had announced Michael Frizzell's presence everywhere he went. She looked up. He stood in the doorway, shoulders slumped, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He had aged a decade in 4 days. The sharp edges of his arrogance had crumbled, leaving behind something raw and unfamiliar. "Can I come in?" His voice was quiet, almost shy. Jennifer leaned back in her chair. "It's your building." "That's not what I asked." She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded toward the chair across from her desk. Michael entered slowly, closing the door behind him. He sat down heavily, his hands clasped between his knees like a child waiting to be scolded. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Michael took a breath. "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you," he began, his voice rough. "I've written speeches in my head, rehearsed apologies, practiced words that might somehow make up for." He trailed off, shaking his head. "But nothing works. Nothing's enough." Jennifer waited. "I keep thinking about that first night," Michael continued. "The way I talked to you. The things I said." He looked down at his hands. "I called you empty-headed. I said you were lucky to exist. I treated you like you were less than human." His voice cracked. "And the whole time, you were the most capable person in the room. You were the only one who could see what was happening. You were the only one who could save me." He laughed bitterly. "And I was too blind, too arrogant, too broken to see anything but my own reflection." Jennifer remained silent, letting him speak. Michael looked up at her, his eyes wet. "I need you to understand something," he said. "Not as an excuse. Just as an explanation." He paused, gathering himself. "My father was a monster." The words hung in the air. He built his fortune by destroying people. Competitors. Partners. Employees. Anyone who showed weakness, he crushed. And he raised me to believe that was strength. Michael's voice trembled. "He told me kindness was weakness. Empathy was failure. The only way to survive was to dominate everyone around you before they could dominate you. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I spent my whole life terrified of becoming him. And then one day I looked in the mirror and realized I already had. He shook his head slowly. The way I treated you, the way I've treated everyone, that wasn't confidence. It was fear. Fear that if I showed any humanity, any vulnerability, someone would use it against me. Jennifer's expression softened slightly, but she didn't speak. When you stood up to me in that restaurant, Michael continued, when you looked me in the eye and told me exactly who I was, no one had ever done that before. No one had ever spoken to me like I was just a person. Like my money and my power didn't matter. He met her gaze. You were the first person who ever talked to me like I wasn't a monster. His voice broke completely. And it made me realize that maybe I didn't have to be one. The silence stretched between them. Jennifer felt something shift inside her, not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to understanding. Michael, she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. I hear you. And I believe you mean what you're saying right now, in this moment. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. But words don't erase wounds, she continued. You can't apologize your way out of cruelty. You can't confess your way into redemption. Michael's face fell. Humility isn't a gift, Jennifer said. It's not something you receive because you finally feel bad about what you've done. Humility is earned. It's built through action, through change, through years of choosing to be different even when no one is watching. She leaned forward. You want to be a better man? Then be one. Not for me. Not because you owe me. But because the person you've been isn't the person you want to die as. Michael stared at her. I've spent 3 years hiding from who I was, Jennifer said. Running from my own strength because I was afraid of what it cost me. You helped me remember that I don't have to be afraid anymore. She paused. Maybe I can help you remember that cruelty doesn't have to be your inheritance. Michael's tears fell freely now, streaming down his face without shame. How? He whispered. How do I start? Jennifer sat back. You start by listening. Really listening, not to respond, but to understand. You start by seeing people as people, not as tools or obstacles or entertainment. She held his gaze. You start by doing one kind thing every day that no one will ever know about. Not for credit. Not for image. Just because it's right. Michael nodded slowly, absorbing every word. And you start, Jennifer added quietly, by forgiving yourself. Not for my sake. For yours. Because carrying guilt forever doesn't make you noble, it just makes you stuck. Michael wiped his face with trembling hands. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. You can. Jennifer's voice was certain. The fact that you're sitting here, crying in front of a woman you tried to destroy, that takes more courage than anything you've ever done in a boardroom. Michael laughed, a broken, watery sound. I never thought I'd hear anyone call me courageous for crying. That's because you've been surrounded by people who taught you emotions were weakness. Jennifer stood and walked around the desk. She stopped in front of him and held out her hand. They were wrong. Michael looked at her hand, then at her face. Slowly, he reached up and took it. Thank you, he whispered. For everything. Jennifer squeezed his hand once, then released it. Don't thank me yet, she said. The work is just beginning. 2 weeks after Gareth Boyd's arrest, the world looked different. The FBI had cleared Michael Frizzell of all charges. The laundering scheme had been traced entirely to his former CFO, and the evidence Jennifer had assembled proved beyond doubt that Michael had been an unwitting victim of a sophisticated betrayal. The stock recovered. Investors returned. The media, hungry for redemption narratives, had already begun rewriting the story. Michael Frizzell, the billionaire who almost lost everything, saved by his own integrity, and the mysterious cyber expert who exposed the truth. They didn't know her name yet. Jennifer had insisted on anonymity, at least for now. But Michael knew. And he wasn't finished. He found her on the rooftop garden of Frizzell Tower, a private space he had never shared with anyone. She stood at the edge, looking out over the city as the sun began its descent, painting the skyline in shades of gold and amber. "You're hard to track down," he said, approaching slowly. "Even in my own building." Jennifer didn't turn around. Old habits. Michael stood beside her, following her gaze across the glittering expanse of downtown. "The board met this morning," he said. "They want to know what happens next. How we rebuild. How we make sure something like this never happens again." He paused. "They want to create a new division. Cyber ethics and internal security. Someone to watch the watchers." Jennifer glanced at him. "Sounds necessary." "It is." Michael turned to face her fully. "And I want you to lead it." Jennifer was silent. "Full authority," Michael continued. "Direct report to me, no one else. You'd have access to every system, every account, every corner of this company. If anyone tries what Gareth did, you'd be the one to catch them." He swallowed. "And you'd never have to hide again. Your name. Your credentials. Your genius. All of it, out in the open. Protected. Respected." Jennifer stared at him for a long moment. "That's quite an offer." "It's not an offer." Michael's voice softened. "It's what you deserve. What you've always deserved." He shook his head. "I can't undo what I said to you. I can't erase those nights at the restaurant, the humiliation, the cruelty. But I can give you this, a place where your brilliance isn't hidden. Where you're not pretending to be less than you are." Jennifer turned back to the city. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant hum of traffic and the whisper of wind across the rooftop. "There's something else I want," she said finally. Michael straightened. "Name it." Jennifer reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, the same one that hung in her apartment. An older woman with kind eyes and Jennifer's smile. "My mother," Jennifer said quietly. "Margaret Munger. She was a teacher for 32 years. Elementary school. She spent her whole life helping children who had nothing, kids from broken homes, kids who'd been told they'd never amount to anything." Her voice trembled slightly. "She's the reason I became who I am. She taught me that strength isn't about power. It's about using what you have to lift others up." Michael looked at the photograph, then at Jennifer. "She's sick," Jennifer continued. "Stage 3 cancer. The treatments are working, but the bills." She shook her head. "That's why I was at the Rosewood. That's why I was wearing an apron and smiling at people who looked through me like glass. Because my mother needed me, and I would have done anything to keep her alive." Michael's chest tightened. "I'll pay for her treatment," he said immediately. "All of it. Whatever she needs." "No." Jennifer held up her hand. "I don't want your charity. I want something bigger." She turned to face him fully. "I want a scholarship fund. For young women entering cybersecurity, especially girls from backgrounds like mine. Girls who are brilliant but invisible. Girls who have been told they don't belong in rooms full of men in suits." Her eyes burned with quiet fire. "I want it fully funded. I want it permanent. And I want it named after my mother." Michael stared at her. "The Margaret Munger Foundation," Jennifer said. "That's my condition." For a moment, Michael didn't respond. Then something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like wonder. "Done." Jennifer blinked. "Just like that." "Just like that." Michael nodded slowly. $10 million to start. Annual contributions matched to company profits. Full scholarships, tuition, housing, mentorship programs, job placement. Whatever you want to build, we'll build it. Jennifer's composure cracked. Her eyes glistened. "Why?" she whispered. "You could have just offered me the job. You didn't have to." "Because you're right." Michael's voice was thick with emotion. "You've been right about everything. I spent my whole life taking, accumulating, building monuments to my own ego." He looked out at the city, His city, his empire, his legacy. Maybe it's time I built something that actually matters. Jennifer was silent for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. Then we have a deal, Mr. Frizzell. Michael took her hand and shook it firmly. Partners, he said. Partners, she agreed. The months that followed transformed everything. Jennifer stepped into her new role with the same precision and brilliance she had once used to dismantle criminal empires. She rebuilt Frizzell Technologies' security infrastructure from the ground up, implementing systems so sophisticated that attempted breaches were caught before they began. But more than that, she changed the culture. She hired analysts from unconventional backgrounds, former servers, night shift workers, single mothers who had taught themselves to code between jobs. She created pathways for people who had been overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. She built a team that reflected the truth she had always known: genius doesn't care about pedigree. The Margaret Munger Foundation launched 6 months later, its first class of scholars standing on the stage of Frizzell Tower's grand auditorium while Jennifer's mother, cancer in remission, tears streaming down her face, watched from the front row. Michael stood at the back of the room, applauding with everyone else. He had changed too. Not overnight. Not perfectly. There were still moments when the old arrogance crept back, when impatience sharpened his voice, when he forgot the lessons Jennifer had taught him. But each time, he caught himself. Each time, he chose differently. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. He established anonymous funds for employees facing medical emergencies. He learned names, not just executives, but janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers. He learned to listen. He became, slowly and imperfectly, the man he had always been afraid to be. And Jennifer? Jennifer stopped hiding. She gave interviews. She spoke at conferences. She testified before Congress about corporate cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Her name became synonymous with integrity, brilliance, and the kind of strength that didn't need to diminish others to shine. She had spent 3 years as a ghost. Now she was a force. On the 1-year anniversary of Gareth Boyd's arrest, Michael and Jennifer stood together on the rooftop garden where their partnership had begun. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in familiar shades of gold. You know, Michael said quietly, I think about that night at the restaurant sometimes. The things I said. The person I was. Jennifer glanced at him. Do you regret it? Michael considered the question. I regret the cruelty, he said finally. I regret the pain I caused you. But I don't regret meeting you. He turned to face her. You showed me who I really was. And then you showed me who I could become. Jennifer smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded. You did the hard work yourself, Michael. I just held up the mirror. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker to life below. The man who once humiliated her now stood beside her, not as a tyrant, but as someone she had taught how to rise.